Hi, it's been a while since I've been here with you. I'm really happy to be back. And it's been a while since I've walked in these woods, and I'm also happy to be back here in this quiet and natural space. Many months have passed, and I've posted a few videos that were pre-recorded in warmer times. I live pretty far in the north, and it is well into the darker days. Diving deeper into the stillness and the darkness and the cold. It can be a time of celebrating the light. It can be a time of celebrating family and feeling cozy. But for me, it's also marked a time that has been filled with stress and a lot of ancestral baggage. My mom tended to really get spun out around the holidays, and this year it's also marking a lot of loss. Not only has this been a time of year where I have personally experienced loss, but this year it's really marking a time where we have to live in seclusion and in isolation, separated from our extended family and our social networks physically, and finding ways to connect like this in the digital space. But I want to spend just this few minutes now to really connect with those mothers living in isolation, because this can be a really intense time. To feel alone and isolated while also having to take care of the needs of your children can really wear on your physical body, can really wear on your spirit and your heart. And so I'm here to tell you you're not alone. And I'm here to tell you that we can do this. We can dive into the darkness and the stillness and still bring all of ourselves forward for our families and our work. This has always been a very difficult time of year for me, and I'm sitting this year with these deep feelings of grief, and also with a newfound depth into the tenderness. And I want to connect to you today from that place, from that tender place that really just longs for love and support. I didn't always experience the kind of love and support that I needed, and so now I practice giving that to myself. And I want to practice that with you. Taking these few moments to breathe and walk in the woods. I want to share with you this time not a birth story, but a postpartum story. My daughter was born in March as we were climbing out of the depths of the darkness of the winter. And that first year was a very difficult year for me emotionally. I love being a mother. I loved giving birth to my daughter. But I was very alone. And as the year passed and we came back around to the winter months, and I still had an infant who was very much in need of my care and attention, I forgot to give that care and attention to myself. And as we got into those darker months again, I became very depressed, and had a lot of tendencies towards anger, aggression, and violence. Fights broke out between my husband and I regularly. I was isolated and alone in a very rural area in a home that needed a lot of care, stacking wood, carrying wood, building a fire just to stay warm, while also caring for an infant and a 7-year-old who was just about the most active little guy you could ever imagine. And every night when my husband would come home from work, it just was a disaster because I was exhausted and I wasn't caring for myself, and I was in a very, very depleted place. And this depleted place left me feeling frustrated, angry, alone. And so when these fights would break out, I quickly would move to a very violent place. My children were, for the most part, always safe. But sometimes the kitchen dishes, the walls, would be victims of this violence. Sometimes doors being slammed. So our house showed the tale of this frustration, and I began to wonder what was going on with me. It just didn't feel like I was myself. And I began to wonder things like, am I bipolar? Am I potentially possessed by a demon? I felt out of control, and I didn't know what to do. This was when I had my first dose of some real spiritual medicine. And by some miracle, a woman came south from the far north to my small town. She grew up in a Native American northern tribe, and she knew the ways of the sweat lodge and how to hold ceremony. And she offered to hold ceremony with my community, and I was invited to participate without knowing what I was stepping into. For a full day, I left my home and had some time to myself and in community. We began at the edge of a river collecting stones for the fire and surveying the land, collecting saplings to build our lodge. And all day we worked to build the sweat in community, but also in silence and in communion with the earth. And that night, as the fire blazed and as we entered the sweat, I didn't know the type of spiritual cleansing, healing, nourishing, and rejuvenation that I would experience. The one thing I'll share was that in this deep communion with the earth and in this beautiful sacred space, my spirit was called to forgiveness. And I was overcome with not only the urge, but also the words and the impulse to fully forgive my maternal lineal past. And I was able to forgive my mother for the fact that she was not able to be there and to give me the kind of love, attention, and care I needed as a child. This is something deep, deep wounding that I'm still healing. There's much more to this story, but that was my first doorway into an opportunity to be in a meditative space where this kind of healing arose from within me in a very authentic and natural way. And that started me on a new path. As I emerged from the sweat, it was like a huge relief. A huge burden was lifted from my shoulders, and an incredible new sense of support and vitalization was infused into me. And it wasn't until years after that that I began even more deeply looking into shamanic practices and energetic healing practices, and eventually attended the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. But it's these kinds of spiritual practices. It doesn't have to be a sweat lodge led by an incredible Native American shaman and medicine woman. Sometimes it's as simple as lighting a candle and creating an altar and creating that quiet space for myself. And other times it's as simple as a walk in the woods. And sometimes it's by connecting with others over the internet to practice together in guided meditation. And so I'll keep reliving and telling these stories here on YouTube. So like this video and subscribe to my channel. But I'm also going to slowly develop my own offerings in which we can be in this spiritual space together, where we can nourish ourselves and go back to our families feeling full and whole, and be able to offer that kind of care from that full place, the kind of care we truly want to give. And begin to free ourselves from the burden of depletion, free ourselves from the burden of feeling hopeless or alone, overwhelmed, and tired. And sometimes we might not feel free from those things, and sometimes we might just be together in all of that. But that's the doorway towards being able to offer that space for others, for your family, for your children, for your friends. So in these dark months and in this quiet and introspective time, may you find your truth. May you find connection. Blessings and love. Until next time.